Thank you all for joining me today for this presentation. I want to thank Hilda, Julia, and Diana for coordinating this and making it possible. It was Julia's idea that I present this webinar to you today, so I'm very excited. We titled this Moving Beyond 3+3, Design Innovations for Precision Oncology. So in order to understand, this is a society about decision-making. So I wanted to take you through how decision-making has changed in the precision oncology context. In order to do that, I need to talk about what's going on in precision oncology. So for those of you familiar with the traditional paradigm for drug development in oncology, you're familiar with this schema here. We tended to, in the era of developing cytotoxic chemotherapies, we could run very small phase 1 trials because we're operating under the assumption that we wanted to give as much chemotherapy as we could possibly handle. Right, so we saw phase 1 trials that were really dose escalation designs where we increased the dose in steps until we saw that the dose was too toxic, and then we either took that dose or the dose lower into phase 2, and we would evaluate, how much local activity there was at that dose level. If we saw sufficient local activity, we would expand. Now massive investment goes into phase 3. We actually run a randomized comparative trial. And the objective of these trials was usually to see that there's a survival benefit from this drug at this dose level relative to the standard of care. So all of this, very small phase 1 was really predicated on the fact that we believed there was a monotonic dose response. And we wanted to give as much dose as we possibly could to the patient. That's a simplifying assumption, and it makes phase 1 very small.
Ryan, excuse me.
Yes.
Did I interrupt for a second? And
of course.
Launch into the deep meat of your presentation. Could you do a quick poll on the audience experience with clinical trials that could help us?
Oh yes, yeah. I wasn't sure if we were going to do that. Yeah, that'd be great. So we have some information. I have some slides here that are pretty foundational to decision-making in clinical trials. So I did want to know, what percentage of the audience is familiar with clinical trials decision-making, with properties of clinical trials? If you're not familiar, then I'm going to cover those topics, give you that base of knowledge. If you are familiar, I'll skip it. So if you could please fill out this poll, and then we can I can address this with Julia when I get to those slides. So thank you so much. Okay, but regulatory approval in oncology, can I minimize this window, or do I say stop sharing and the poll keeps working?
Just click on the X, please.
Oh, okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
So, but regulatory approval in oncology is among the lowest among disease indications. You can see the average is about 9.6%, from phase 1. So after initiating phase 1 to regulatory approval, usually that requires a successful phase 3 trial, right? So you can think about phase 3 being unsuccessful. An average of 9.6, but oncology between 2006 and 2015 was down here at 5.1. I think it's less now, even 3.9. So we look at this across other disease areas, and it's much lower.